Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and thank you for joining us for another recraft video. Today we're going to be working on a pair of vintage Asolo hiking boots. I haven't done any hiking boots yet, but these are an older pair and I definitely want to make sure to make a video on this. I'll definitely make some other ones down the road with other types of soles, but come join us and check out a pair of vintage ones at least. So again, thank you for joining us. And so these here, as you can tell, they are in some rough shape. Now, obviously, there's not much we can do about the uppers because the uppers are starting to crack in some of these areas. But this gentleman has had these for quite some time and he really wants to be able to save them. So we're going to go ahead and do that for him. First things first, we got to take out his shoe trees that he has, which are kind of interesting. They're a pair of shoe trees for some churches. Kind of cool. He said he's going to bring them by when he's picking these up. So we're going to go ahead and get them taken care of for him. Now, Asolo boots these days, most of the ones that we do work on, they're a little different. Get these out of the way. They're a molded style, where this one, move my last out of the way, you got to take the laces out as well, where this one's got a little bit of a different build. It's got a midsole on there. And so this leather midsole right here, you can see, is stitched onto the boot, and then afterwards this sole is glued onto it. And that's actually a very, I don't know how to put it exactly in words, but it's a proper way of doing a certain type of build of boot, in other words, which is this here. This is the type of way they did it before molded soles came along. Molded soles in some cases are good, but if you're planning to have a pair of boots for many years, this is ideally what you'd want. A pair of hiking boots, usually you don't go for that Goodyear welted route, just because a Goodyear welted boot is going to be a little bit heavier, in other words, where this, because it doesn't have the welt, it doesn't have that cork filler as much or anything, it tends to be a little bit more lighter weight. And when you're backpacking and doing long distance, it's definitely well worth having a few ounces off. I was actually what book was it? The Shoe Dog. That's what I was listening to. They talked about saying that for every half ounce, I believe, I actually wrote it down in my little notebook here. I've gotta let you all know. So for every 1 ounce less in weight over a 1 mile distance, that's equivalent to 55 pounds less weight, in other words. So if you add an extra ounce of weight to a pair of boots or shoes over a mile distance, it's equivalent to 55 pounds that you're carrying around. So that was a pretty interesting fact. So that's why they used to build them like this. Nowadays, the boots are definitely lighter with those molded style soles. So definitely a huge plus in the molded style category. Put these laces up top as well, because he's got red and blue ones, and I don't know if he wants them replaced or if he's keeping them or what. But it's definitely definitely a better build as far as longevity and durability when you have it like this here, where with the molded style it's a lot lighter weight. So we're just going to go ahead and take off this sole here. It's already started coming apart at the toe anyways, and this gentleman is going to have his midsole replaced as well, because in a lot of cases, a build like this, you could just replace just the sole without having to remove that midsole there and stitching on a new one. But he's had these long enough where I think it's a good time to remove that midsole and then get everything thoroughly cleaned up and go from there. I don't really want to use a thinner on this. It's kind of like a last resort. Looks like maybe he may have fixed it up at some point. I see a little bit of super glue in there. At least he just used super glue, not Gorilla Glue or Crazy Glue or anything like that. Yes, using Gorilla Glue is not a good idea, and Crazy Glue we are not big fans of because for us cobblers, having to remove it actually is a bit of a fire hazard. We have fireproof bags on our machines, and the small fibers from Crazy Glue and Gorilla Glue actually clog them up, and we've had a fire department tell us about it, and they said, yeah, if you ever come across that, you better clean out those machines. So did a whole entire video talking about the glues in particular. If you want to check that out, it was how to do minor repairs at home if you're in a rush or just need something done quickly. And I mentioned not to use Gorilla Glue or Crazy Glue. There we go. So we've got the sole off, and yep, at this point what I'm going to go ahead and do right here, this is the midsole. So it looks like on the back end of the heel it was nailed in, which is fairly common, and then around here it was Blake stitch. So that means the arm of the machine goes inside the boot and the needle goes straight through everything. And the way we have to remove these ones is we're going to take it to the sander and sand out all that thread there, so that it's a lot easier to be able to pull up that midsole. It's already coming up on some of the edges here, so shouldn't be too bad to do. So let me go ahead and take off the other sole, do the same thing. I'll take it to the machine, sand it all out, and be back here in just a few minutes and let you see how it comes apart. I'm not going to bother with the sanding part of it. It's quite literally just quick sanding. It takes about 15-20 seconds to go through it with some pressure, and that's about it. So we'll see you back in just a few. Alright, so I've got everything sanded out. So as you can tell, it's at that center there, that's where the glue was, and then the rest of it we kind of went around the edges a little deeper to get the stitches kind of cut through, in other words. Now just go ahead and start peeling up. Again, I really want to try to avoid using a thinner. This would be a lot easier with thinner. It'd probably just peel right up, but considering how many years these have been in use, in other words, they have definitely been worn down. You can tell there's a lot of dirt buildup inside there and everything, and just, yeah, it ain't too pretty. Trying to see if that, nope, that's not cork. Thought that was just little pieces of cork, but one of the downsides with hiking boots, sometimes you gotta take them off on the trail and put them back on, and you get dirt in them, or, you know, perfect angle, you get just a little bit in there, and eventually it kind of gets in underneath the insole and kind of between the sole and everything. Same thing with mud too, and water, so it can really do a number. Now the back end with all the nails in here. So they used a combination of clinch nails, which are the nails that go into the material here, the sole or the midsole, and inside the boot, and then they turn into a hook. So I gotta be a little bit careful trying to pull them out so I don't actually damage anything back here. And as well as those clinch nails, they used a wire nail too, and the wire nail is usually done by machine. We have one of those machines that just shoots a wire nail in, and they did a number of them all around. Now typically most nails will try to pull out from the inside of the boot, but I did already take apart the other one there, just to make sure to see how things are on this one. Again, it's kind of like a learning experience for all of us cobblers sometimes. And I haven't worked on a pair of these vintage ones yet, at least in a solo model. I've worked on other ones, and so it's always going to be a bit of a learning curve here and there. So because these are wire nails, they don't have heads on them, so I could quite literally just pull them on out of here. It'd be a lot easier if this leather wasn't all dried out like crazy and stuff. So these wire nails, they got bent up at the very top. So this is how it was. That right there was the top of it, and the bottom of it, on the inside, was a little more like that. So it did bend a little bit, but we got to make sure we try to remove as much of these as we can. Otherwise they could, well, not as much as we can, but get all of them out of the way. Otherwise they're going to dig into the person wearing these, well, into the foot of the person who is wearing these. So we don't want that. Whew. Some of these just do not want to come out. Oh. Okay, so I'm gonna have to like mess around with this for probably a little while to make sure I get all the nails out. Looks like I got all the ones here. Is there a nail? Ah, missed one there. It's always a good idea to go through and double check everything. Okay. And then I just got a couple here on the back end that I gotta really work at. And the problem with these, typically on most like dress shoes or Western boots, I'll take out the insole here real quick. These are some aftermarket insoles, it looks like. And typically I'll put like a pad on the inside and then hammer the nails down in there, and then I can reach in and pull them out. Well, it won't work with these quite easily. So just because everything's one, old, and two, those wire nails, they're all sorts of twisted up and curved. So my goal is to try to pull them out this way as best as possible, because it's always easier to fix and patch up leather underneath here than it is on the inside of the boot, because the person can still feel it if I have to put some kind of filler or something in there. So that's why, worst of the worst case scenario, and as much as I don't like to, sometimes we got to pull them out from this direction. There are no nail heads also, they're just strictly wire. So it's not like I'm ripping through it all, just trying to take these things out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get the rest of that taken care of. Next step is I'm going to be pulling out the stitches. I'm not going to bother you with that because it's a very, very tedious, time-consuming process. I have to use like a combination of these here to reach inside the boot to try to grab whatever I can, but because they're older threads, they're kind of worn out and everything. They just keep ripping and ripping. And then also from the outside, I'll use like needle nose pliers like this, or the little ones like that, and just pull out whatever I can and go through all of it and take out whatever I can. Again, it's ripping on these. Typically, usually on a Blake stitch like this, we'll reach in there and we pull one strand, the whole thing will just come out in a single piece basically. But these are older, and this is, it looks like cotton thread that was used on this, so it's fairly done for, unfortunately, and it's just going to keep ripping at me. So I'll do whatever I can to remove the old stitches, but there may be some little spots here and there that I just can't do anything about. Can't reach far down inside, and there's gonna be just a small strand. Not a bad thing if there's just a little left over, just a little bit, but if you leave the whole thing in, that's not a good thing. So I'll go ahead and get all that taken care of, and then blow off all this dust and everything, and we'll see you back here in just a few for our next. Alright, so I had to take out the insoles because these things were shot. I don't know if my video recording worked back at the workbench when I took these out, but as you can tell, this is the inside of them. They were just destroyed completely, so I decided to remove them because whoever resold these before kind of did a number on them as well. But anyways, hopefully we'll be able to get that. Well, we'll be able to replace that. But that's what it looks like right now. It's all open and everything. Got a lot of that dirt and dust out. So at this point, considering the condition of everything, I didn't want to pull any more of the stitches that are in the upper portion of everything. And now I'm going to go through our Swedish Bath. Now this Swedish Bath has vinegar, desalting agent, let's see, what was it? Also easy cleaner, it's water also mixed in there, a number of things. It's going to help deactivate a lot of the old oils and everything like that, help clean these up. So go ahead and submerge these. Got my brush here, kind of clean them all around. They've definitely seen better days. But they really needed the love and attention. Okay. Get a little bit of that inside the boot there. There we go. So they're cleaned up. Now we gotta let them dry. So I'm gonna put them up top in our sink here. We've got a ceramic sink, so everything's gonna kind of go down the drain for us. One of the downsides of this cleaner here that we have mixed up here for our Swedish Bath is a pair of boots like this. It really smells like stinky feet, because these boots were worn for hiking, obviously. And so they start to give off a bit of a smell when we're cleaning them. Can't really complain. I mean, we work on shoes all day long, right? But every now and then you get that extra smelling one, and I drew the short stick on this one, and I got that smelly one. So alright, I'll put up with it tonight. If you don't know already, it's actually after hours already here. I'm working kind of late. Had a bit of a long day running around all over the place and stuff. So, inside. Yeah, I think that Swedish Bath is done for. I have to replace it. So the Swedish Bath, usually we save it for a number of different things. We have like multiple ones set up sometimes, and then we kind of go through them. They're able to be reused a number of times. But when you get a dirty pair of boots like this, it kind of ruins the whole bath, and it happens. So now I just gotta let these sit and dry for a little while. I'm not gonna put any kind of boot tree or shoe trees in there, because they're holding their shape very well. These older boots, especially, they use such a thick leather. You can tell after getting soaked and it has no interior structure there, everything is holding up very well. So just a matter of letting it dry overnight, and then tomorrow morning, then I can continue on and start getting things going for them. So for you guys, it'll be a few seconds, but otherwise I'll see you tomorrow on these. Alright everyone, so we've gotten the new inner sole in there already, and everything's glued up for the shank. It's a little shank that came with it like that there, so it's nice and lightweight, but it gives us some stiffness. It was actually embedded inside of the original footbeds here. There's some kind of cheap junk to basically cover it. I don't know, could have been prime chunk of something, who knows. But we're going to put that shank in there, and then afterwards we're going to go ahead and lay down this cork right here to make sure it fills in that void there, because it did seem like there was supposed to be originally some cork in there, but it's all been so flattened out and compacted. So now we're going to make sure to put some cork in there and get it all filled in nicely. Got some clinch nails on the back end of the heel. Typically that's where you put some, just in case if you get them resoled the next time, start pulling it up, everything doesn't start coming apart on you again. So the expectation is that these are going to last for quite some time again. Before I do the, where I put it, this guy, the midsole, this one right here, I'm gonna, well, actually after the midsole I'm gonna do that. So once we got the midsole on, I'm gonna need to condition the uppers. So let me go ahead and get all that taken care of with the cork, that shank in there, and then once we got that midsole in, I'll see you back then when we're about to be trimming it. So we'll see you when we're trimming that midsole off. Alright everyone, so we're back here again with these. We've got all the cork and everything filled in right there and glued up. Thought I'd show you real quick beforehand, at least, that we got all that cork in there. Now obviously we didn't see much cork residue in there. It seemed like there was some fine powder, and it looks like just cork was never replaced or something. So there was just a little bit left over from whoever resold them before, and they never put new fresh cork in there. But I've got this super prime leather here, and just for anybody who's wondering, it's So obviously this is not JR, which is the highest grade leather that we tend to carry usually. This is kind of a house grade because it is going to be a midsole after all, so there's no need for a JR sole. But super prime right there is usually how they identify the different leathers. Giant is the size of the overall piece of leather, and then 8 to 9, that's 8 to 9 iron, the thickness. Super prime is kind of the ideal one. There's prime, there's genuine leather, which is really low grade. So if you're ever wondering and you're checking it out and it says genuine leather, majority of time it just means cheap leather. Super prime is ideal kind of thing. And again, the only thing from that is kind of oak bark tanned, which is JR leather. There's a few other ones out there too. We like JR overall most, but in the near future I'll probably be testing them side by side to other companies as well. But for the time being, I just thought I'd show you real quick. Obviously you can tell there's a lot left over here, because it is a giant sole. That's one of the biggest sizes there are. I think it goes what was it, extra large, giant, and gigantic. At least a lot of these pre-cut leather full soles are like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this on the press, let it cure and cool off for a little while, and I'll be back in just a little bit and we'll go from there. All right. Alright, so we've got everything trimmed up, sanded out. Obviously the bottom we need to sand out before we stitch it so that we don't accidentally sand and nick the stitches. Sometimes someone may forget to sand out the bottom and it gets stitched. It happens, but we just have to be extra cautious about it. Now I didn't channel these obviously because they're supposed to act more like a midsole, and so I'm still going to go ahead and do a very light hand channeling, which is this tool right here. And it's just going to do a very light channel so I have a marking of where I want the stitches to sit and everything. There we go. Gives you a nice little strand like that there. Good old channeling tool like that. I've got a couple of these around the shop. So I remember years ago growing up as a kid, my father, he had, if you've seen me channel shoes on the channeler that's attached to the machine, well, he had a table version like that. It was a really small one, had a foot pedal and everything. You press down and it goes just really fast, tiny little machine. Well, before doing that, he would have me go through the shoes with one of these and use it as kind of like a guide and marker. And then it ended up being very enjoyable. And then after a period of time, he had me doing so many of them, I was like, can I try doing the channel machine actually? And I finally learned how to use the channel machine. That one was much easier than this machine that we have the attachment to. It was simpler, I guess you'd say, because it sat on the table and you just run it across like this and stuff. Where on the machine here, you kind of have to pull it towards you. It's got a different blade setup and everything, so it's different. In other words, I have a table version, but it's really big, and I need to find a specific blade. I've been trying to hunt this blade down for it for a long time. Nobody seems to have it. I checked distributors all over and trying to talk to them, seeing what do I need to do. Then everyone's like, no clue. So definitely hope to get that thing up and running eventually. So all right, so now at this point I'm going to go ahead and run this over to a stitcher and let's stitch it on up. So now we're over at our Blake stitch machine. Grab some water and spray down this sole. Get it nice and wet. And the Blake stitch machine, or we call it a McKay stitch, it's just got a straight needle that goes straight through like it was originally, and everything and stitches that midsole, the inner sole, and everything all together at one time. This thing does have obviously limitations how far back it can sometimes go, but we're going to do it the same way kind of as the factory on this one. By the way, I have blue thread in here, so I thought I'd keep it blue. No one sees it anyways. It's not going to stand out like crazy, except for on the inside of the boot. You might be able to. There we go. All right. Voila. So now I'm just going to go ahead and run a very thin adhesive around the edge over top of that stitch, just as an extra precaution. It's kind of that thin super glue stuff that we use, and that'll just secure it extra. So go ahead and stitch up the other one and then glue everything up, and when it's time to stick the soles together, because I need to let them cure overnight, basically I'm just gonna glue them together. There's nothing too fancy about that. I'll let you check it out though when I'm sanding it though. It seems like a number of people like to see the sanding part of things, so I'll see you back in just a little bit. Almost forgot, before I was gonna glue everything up, I still gotta run the nails in. Now, I did mention that I was gonna condition the uppers after I got the midsole on, but I think I'm gonna have to hold off on that just because the midsole is then gonna absorb it too much, and I don't want the adhesive getting countered. Sometimes we're able to do that just because we've got the welt that's in the way, but there's no welt to this, so I don't know what I was thinking in the first place. But for the time being, we're gonna stick the soles on there, let it cure, then we can sand it, then we can thoroughly condition it. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to almost drench these in conditioners, so alright. And the back of the heel we're nailing down obviously with the clinch nails again, because the back end's usually not stitched, and it's better to do the nails because there's less holes from the nails than there are from the stitching. And what happens is a number of people end up using the other shoe to take off the other boot to take off the mate, and they always catch that corner and just rip everything out, and if you got too many holes, that becomes kind of a weak point. But doing nails here, it's going to cause more problems because those nails will shift around, and before you know it, you're going to have a nail poking you in the foot. So just the clinch nails on the back of the heel, just like that there, and they're ready to go. So I'll go ahead and glue everything up and stick it all together, and we'll see you back a little later.